all across America and around the world. This is Veterans Radio. This is Veterans Radio.
Welcome to Veterans Radio. I am Jim Fausone. I'm the officer of the deck today. We've got some great programs for you. I think you'll find very interesting. We always want to remind you can find more about Veterans Radio at its Facebook site or by going to veteransradio.net, where we're on the web 24/7. You can find a lot of our podcasts there as well. We post new ones every Tuesday, so you can get a new story, a new interview, something you didn't know before by going to veteransradio.net. And before we get started, we want to thank our sponsors. First up, we want to thank National Veteran Business Development Council, nvbdc.org. It was established to certify both service-disabled and veteran-owned businesses. You'll find out how they can help your business by going to nvbdc.org. We want to thank Legal Help for Veterans. Legal Help for Veterans fights for veterans' disability rights all across the nation. You can reach them at 800-693-4800 or on the web at legalhelpforveterans.com. We also want to thank our latest national sponsor, Veteran Lending Council. It is a community dedicated to educating lenders, realtors, and veterans on the VA Home Loan Benefit Program. You can check them out on Facebook and other social media outlets. We want to welcome to Veterans Radio today a U.S. Army veteran who's got a cool business, Chris Videau. We're going to talk about his military career, his helicopter flying, and then we're going to talk about Sheets Laundry Club. Chris, welcome to Veterans Radio.
Thanks, Jim. I appreciate you having me and the opportunity to speak with you.
Well, this is we're going to start with the military stuff, if you don't mind, and how a nice kid like you ended up in the U.S. Army for 20 years and flying helicopters. Give us the thumbnail.
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up in a small town in northern California. At 18, my brother went to college when he turned 18, and I don't think at 18 I was ready for college, but I was definitely ready to get out of that small town. So I joined as a military police officer in 1996. I did that for about 6 years, made it to E6. Wasn't really my cup of tea. I have the utmost respect for law enforcement. I didn't enjoy the constant night shift. It wasn't my cup of tea to be up all night driving around. So through that process, I got kind of the education I needed and put in a flight packet for Warrant Officer Candidate School. Was fortunate enough to get picked up, and in 2001 headed down to Fort Rucker, Alabama, and transitioned into aviation and spent the remaining 14 years of my career flying Blackhawks.
Well, you've got to talk about Fort Rucker because here on Veterans Radio, we love helicopter pilots. As I mentioned earlier to you, my partner Dale Throneberry was a chief warrant officer and flew helicopters in Vietnam. So how did you gravitate to helicopters? And I'm sure you enjoyed your time at Mother Rucker. Everybody does, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Mother Rucker's fun. I was actually just there a few weeks ago, believe it or not. But yeah, as I was an MP, how I got the bug, I had an opportunity to just do a kind of a fun flight, if you would. We were doing some medevac practice. I think it was just an E2 or an E3. And at the end of that, they gave everybody a little flight around the parade field there at Fort Carson. And it just really changed my perspective on what I wanted to do with my life and my career. I just thought it was so cool to sit in the back seat and see those guys fly that helicopter. So no different than business today. I figured out, that was a changing point for me. So I think I went down to the education center and tried to figure out what those guys had to do to become pilots, and spent the next 3 or 4 years in the Army kind of chasing those dreams to prepare myself for the AFAST and kind of meet the other qualifications. And it was kind of off to the races after that. Fort Rucker for me was a blast. I'm not going to lie, I had fun. It was, I was there for, I think, about 18 months the first time for flight school, and long, exhausting days, Monday through Friday, but we definitely made a lot of trips to Florida and enjoyed the weekends. So it was definitely an interesting duty station.
Well, I think I saw that you ended up with over 2,000 hours of flying time, that you became a chief instructor pilot, that you had tours really all over the world, including into some of the hot spots. Talk to us about some of your overseas assignments.
Yeah. So as a helicopter pilot, I was in Iraq, and I also lived in Germany for, I think, about 2.5 years. Getting to fly Europe in itself was an amazing opportunity, because you travel all over Europe, from down to Italy on up to Copenhagen and all over. So the experience there was unreplaceable. I mean, it was a paid vacation in Europe for 2.5 years. Probably one of the most enjoyable 2.5 years of my life. Iraq, not quite as enjoyable. It was definitely an experience and an opportunity. As a pilot, it definitely, it tests your skills. You don't fly in a combat zone anywhere near like you fly in the civilian world. Kind of the FAA rules, in a sense, are kind of out the window. You're flying more for survival mode, which makes the flying fun. So it really grows you as a pilot, and it makes you not second guess your decisions. You have to be quick to react to whatever that decision is, and stick with it and make it work. So it grows you as a pilot. It grows you as a human, and it was a phenomenal experience. But I definitely wouldn't want to make a 20-year career out of Iraq either.
When we've talked to helicopter pilots, and as I say, we talked to a lot of them, because of the way in which you fly, you get a whole different perspective on the ground, on the theater, on what's going on than you do if you're in a jet zipping by, right? And that different perspective had to really come into play when you were in Iraq, I suspect.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously I've never flown a jet, but yes, they're in and out, coming typically from outside a combat zone, and in many cases into the combat zone, and then back out of it when they're done. I think as a helicopter pilot, you're definitely more in tune with the guys on the ground. You're often their first line of either defense or rescue, and you've got to understand that in many situations, especially air assaults, that you're the only opportunity for those guys sometimes to get out of a hostile environment. And if you can't get in there and get them, they've got to fight their way out of it. And that's not always an option for those guys on the ground. So you really do understand that, me getting in there and getting these guys out, is their life's dependent on it. Their wives and kids' lives are dependent on their parents. So there's a lot of people that are affected by you getting in there and helping these guys in a time of need. So it's definitely a job that, I never took lightly, and I understood that how dependent the ground troops can be on the helicopter pilots in a very, hostile environment.
And we're talking to Chris Videau, who's a U.S. Army retired warrant officer who spent 16 years or 14 years, something like that, flying Black Hawk helicopters. Chris, remind our listeners sort of what the role of the Sikorsky Black Hawk is in theater.
Yeah, I mean, it's got a few main roles. Medevac being one of them. It's the main medevac source for the combat zone. I did not do medevac in Iraq. I was an air assault pilot. So that's the other main role is taking, soldiers into a combat zone and dropping them off for whatever mission they have within that region. And typically our job is to return and pick them up as well. And that's just an air assault. You're taking them in and bringing them out so they can execute a mission. So those are the two main jobs of a Black Hawk UH-60 when you're deployed.
And I want to transition a little bit to some of, let me reference it this way. So while we're talking about his skills as a pilot, because of your length of service, you had a number of responsibilities relative to budgeting and personnel and what I'll call the business end of training and instructing as well with Blackhawks, if I understand it.
Yeah. I mean, even in the combat role, I wasn't an instructor pilot in Iraq, but I was a safety officer and an instructor pilot and also a standardization pilot. All of those come with different roles. I started out as a safety officer was my first track. So, it was just collecting analytical data to keep, and doing the data that was required for the command to make sure that we were operating within the SOP safely, and we weren't conducting missions that were not within our SOP, that weren't safe for the company. So at the end of the day, it's making sure the guys are doing things the correct way. As I transitioned to an instructor pilot later, I spent most of my days, really just teaching the guys, whether it was out of flight school or the senior guys, giving them their annual evaluations, just making sure that they were fit to fly, safe to fly, and just doing the basic evaluations. As a standardization pilot, standing up a combat aviation brigade at Fort Carson, we spent a lot more of our time writing those SOPs, working with commanders, figuring out what assets we had, what resources we had, how many helicopters we had, how many pilots we had. It was all part of standing up a brand new aviation brigade.
Now I'm gonna tie this in later too, because I'm gonna ask this guy, like, hey, how did this Army grunt think he could run a business? But I want our listeners to hear what he's done while in the Army, and this is going to tie back into running a successful business. But before I get to Sheet Laundry Club, Chris, I know your wife is also a Army veteran, and we should give some props to the women who serve. Tell us a little bit about Lorian.
Yeah, so Lorian and I, we met in the Army. We met probably about 10 years before we actually got married. She was serving as a military police canine handler. I had met her while I was a military police officer. I actually left for Fort Rucker. We were both stationed at Fort Sill at the time. I left for Fort Rucker, Alabama for flight school. She stayed at Fort Sill. We kind of went along our separate ways for a better part of 10 years. And I was stationed up in Alaska, and social media, I happened to see that she was on there, and we kind of connected, and we were really good friends prior. There was never any dating or relationship. But I happened to be going to a conference down south while I was in Alabama, and she was going to be in that area. And we kind of connected, hung out, revisited, and she got out, got her degree, became a veterinarian technician. And just one thing led to another, and we just continued to stay in touch. And the next thing I know, we were making long distance trip between, Flagstaff, Arizona and Alaska. And, several years later, we got married and had kids, and life has been good.
That's great. And as I say, we should always give our props to our women veterans who don't get enough recognition for what they do for the country.
Absolutely, I agree.
One of the things that you experienced over in Iraq, though, again, ties in a little bit to the business you're in today, and that is seeing the burn pits and the trash in the cities, and just sort of everything gets thrown in the fire, resulting in some sort of, black smoky haze. Tell us about that experience while you were going through it, and how it sort of shaped you both physically and mentally.
Yeah. So, I think it's 4 million plus veterans today, and unfortunately this doesn't include Vietnam. I believe it's just the Iraq and Afghanistan suffer lasting effects from the burn pits overseas. If you don't know what the burn pits are, which I think everybody listening here does, it's just football field size burn pits where, the U.S. is burning all the trash overseas rather than hauling it out of there. And in some of the larger cities, you would see the cities burning it as well, but a majority of that was the U.S. military burning it. As a pilot, if you kind of picture, black smoke goes up, and then about 1,000 feet or so, the wind starts to carry it left or right. That's where we spent a majority of our day was flying through where that smoke was was at. We actually used burn pits as checkpoints at night because you could see them from 10 miles away. So it gave you a good reference because they burn 24/7. We joked while we were in Iraq that we were all going to get lung cancer from the burn pits, and it was kind of the running joke. The reality is, we got back. For me, I got back, and you don't run a lot when you're in Iraq, so you got back, and I struggled to run as well as I had prior to deploying. At first, I just thought it was being out of shape for a year, but I never did get the 2-mile run time down to where it was prior. I was always great at PT tests, and now I was pushing just to make my minimum run time. So had a lot of trouble breathing while I was running, and later, I started going to the doctor, trying to figure out why I was, coughing and having breathing issues. And over time, we've really learned to understand that it was a lot of the dioxins that was probably in all the plastic water bottles that we were drinking out of that were being burnt on a daily basis that were in that smoke. And inhaling that really messed up my lungs permanently. So that was, to your point, kind of what gave me the drive to create a plastic-free business model.
Well, and I'll get to that momentarily. But you just triggered something that I think probably our veteran radio listeners are thinking about, in that it makes sense to them that pilots are flying through this stuff, even as it tries to disperse in the air. But did the military, did the Army discharge you under any sort of medical discharge, or did VA recognize what you were experiencing? Like, hey man, my lungs don't work the same way. I can't get back to my run times. How did that play out for you?
Yeah, so I'm actually one of the fortunate. Yes, the VA did recognize, because they were all documented prior to my retirement. I wasn't medically retired. But they did recognize the lung damage that I have occurred, and I do have a disability for that. So obviously compensated for it, which doesn't fix the issue at hand. But yes, I was compensated for it. Unfortunately, it's been very much a challenge for say the kid that was in for 4 years, that got out and 2 years later started experiencing issues. Those are the kids that are struggling, and we've actually worked with. I talked to Senator Tillis this year here in North Carolina. We've worked with Jon Stewart from Apple TV, Burn Pits 360, Grunt Style Foundation and Grunt Style. We've worked with them this year to help get a bill passed, which did just recently get passed through the Senate, the PAC Act, and that's to help these veterans that are suffering, permanent lung damage. Get the benefits and the medical care that they're entitled to, that the government for years has turned a blind eye on. So that's been a huge step for us in 2022, getting that passed. So these veterans that have much more severe issues than I do are getting the medical treatment they deserve.
Yeah, we've been trying to shine a light on this in Veterans Radio for some time now, and it seems like there's the momentum here in 2022 to get this done and not let these veterans languish, as so many have, on toxic exposure kind of things, whether it be Camp Lejeune or going back to Agent Orange or any of the toxic base issues. So really do appreciate your continued working on this area. And again, when I was kind of looking into Chris Videau and going, do I talk to Sheets Laundry Club CEO? That part of the story from a Veterans Radio standpoint and our listeners is really interesting, and we appreciate all that you're doing. It also kind of springboarded you into what to do when you retired, which is Sheets Laundry Club. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so Sheets Laundry Club, and people, I say it was a bonehead idea in the beginning. It wasn't necessarily a bonehead idea. But my wife and I, we've been, for several years before this, we've really tried to rid single-use plastics out of our life, our home. Whether it's, we got in the lake, we take canned water. And now I've got friends that take canned water because they know my story. So we're trying to make a change, whether it's, through some of the positions that I've been able to do through this business, working with some celebrities, or it's changing it locally. But Sheets Laundry Club was an idea that we had to figure out how to, kind of turn the tide on plastic pollution, no pun intended. Laundry space, accounts for almost 1 billion laundry jugs a year in the U.S. alone. And I think less than 91% of them are actually recycled. So the rest wind up in landfill or oceans, or they're sent to third world countries as we pay other countries to take our plastic trash and they burn it. So we're still creating the same problems. We're just not doing it at home. So the goal was to figure out how to create a product line and kind of reinvent the wheel so we can, have the same efficacy in a product that cleans, but not in the same package. So ultimately, that's what Sheets Laundry Club is we're a plastic-free laundry company. We've learned how to take the liquid out of laundry detergent by dehydrating it and putting them in a postcard-sized sheet format that goes in a box that works just as well as liquid detergents, but it doesn't come with the 500-year lasting effects of the bottle that it came in.
Now you guys started this in I think it was 2019, right?
Yeah. I mean, we've officially launched in December of 2019. Several years before that, it took several years of planning to kind of work the kinks out of it, figure out how to make a product that worked, find a manufacturing company that could do the product and do it to scale that could meet the demands we needed. But yeah, December 19 was when we were just working out of my business partner's garage just to see if we could make a successful go of it.
So I think you got out of service. I didn't ask you this earlier, but I think you got out of service in about 2016.
Yeah, I did. I actually, February of 2016 was my retirement date. Yeah.
So this goes back to the question, which is always asked: how the hell did this Army vet think he could launch a business like this? What experiences did he have? And we talked a little bit about all this management experience and budgeting and personnel and safety and standard procedures that you were getting a business education, you just didn't know it in the Army.
Yeah.
But again, talk a little. I'm kind of real curious about this period between 2016 and 2019, because today you're an overnight success. But let's face it, there was a lot of hard times, a lot of financial times, a lot of technical times, manufacturing problems. Talk to us about that period.
Yeah. So I was fortunate enough. My wife is an artist. So when we retired, we moved out to North Carolina. I actually have a buddy that owned a NASCAR team. So we kind of came out here, and I helped with his team for a little bit on the marketing side. Kind of really realized it wasn't for me. But my wife's an artist, so we opened a little brick and mortar business here in Mooresville, North Carolina, called Painting with a Twist. It was a paint and sip studio. We did that for about 4 years. That's really where I got a lot of the business experience, maybe on the civilian side, whether it's understanding QuickBooks, how to, build out your chart of accounts, work with a CPA, whether it was merchant accounts processing.
You learned about cash flow, didn't you?
I learned about cash flow, and I learned how hard it was in the brick and mortar space, because we worked for 4 years, 7 days a week. And, my son was basically raised by single parents because one of us was always working. And through those 4 years, you're really we struggled just to keep the power bill paid and the payroll paid for employees. We weren't making money. So my wife was ready for me to go get a job flying somewhere. And that last year of the paint studio was kind of when I came up with the idea for Sheets Laundry Club. And nobody, and I'll tell you, nobody thought it was a good idea. Everybody thought I was crazy. And I think a lot of the military experience background really helped me persevere through that, because when enough people tell you no, eventually you'll understand that you got to quit. It's a bad idea. And maybe I'm hard-headed, maybe I'm ignorant, but I didn't take no for an answer. So we spent, a better part of 18 months or so building a product, a plan, and then kind of taking it to a couple investors that believed in what we were doing and the product that we had, and they saw the success. That they saw success in what we were doing, and that's kind of when it came to fruition. And I think it really took me a solid year before I actually had people that kind of realized, hey, maybe this might work out for this guy, because everybody else thought it was the dumbest idea since sliced bread.
Yeah, and you do have to tackle a problem and not sort of say, well, geez, my brother-in-law thinks it's dumb, I should stop. But again, that's some of that Army training, right? You got to be hard-headed enough to say, I'm still going to make the objective, even if there's something in my way. And you mentioned manufacturing. Find this one thing to have the idea. You had the idea, but somehow you have to manufacture this. How'd you go about finding somebody who could grab your vision and turn it into a product?
Yeah, I mean, that's the hardest part. First and foremost, it's nobody's ever, I tell every entrepreneur, nobody's going to see your vision. Nobody's going to understand your vision. In a meeting today with our COO, we still talk vision and where we want to go with this company and what we got to do, because again, your vision's only as good as the information you share with others. But it was definitely a challenge to find it. There's a few manufacturing facilities around the world that have the technology to make this type of product. We've worked with every one of them, and we finally found one that had the best pricing, but also the best product. We went back and forth for 6 months and spent north of $20,000 just getting samples. 50 laundry detergent sheets here, 50 there. Just to do the testing and send it to laboratories in Ohio that do laundry testing. Again, and that's one of 43 products. You have to do that with every product within your line. We sell scent boosters, and there's one manufacturing company that fills those in the United States because they own the patent on it. But the difference is their machinery is set up to fill plastic tubes. It's not set up to fill bags or cardboard tubes. So we had to develop a cardboard tube that would fit within their machining specifications. So you kind of have to build your product line to work in a capacity where things are made to work with plastic, and kind of replicate the design of that product in a different form. And for us, it's cardboard tubes, or the deodorant, it's cardboard tubes. So that's always been a challenge. That's the hardest part about being in this space, is there's no manufacturing facilities that are really set up to just do what they do on a daily basis without the use of plastic. So we get creative and make the packaging fit what their machinery is capable of working with.
And we're talking to Chris Videau, who's the founder, CEO of Sheets Laundry Club, which you can find at sheetslaundryclub.com and look at their products. We're going to talk about them in a minute, but I want to go back to that point where you had a brick and mortar facility and all the things that went along with that. Tell us how that experience about brick and mortar fit into the type of business you wanted to go forward with Sheets Laundry Club.
I think, I don't know that it fit in. I think it gave me an understanding of how to run a business, and we didn't make enough money, so I couldn't outsource anything. Every aspect of it, whether it was doing your taxes, hiring the people, doing the payroll, we did everything in house because we couldn't afford to outsource it. So once I transitioned into this business, we did the same thing. We were able to internally do everything ourselves, and I gained that experience through that brick and mortar. Which allowed us to really manage our cash flow in the beginning, so that we could, not pay CPAs and accountants and payroll services to do everything, because cash is king inside a business, and if you can't manage your cash flow, you can't grow, you can't move forward, you can't order product, you can't make payroll. So I think that was the biggest benefit of owning a business, and I think it also gave me a lot of experience to managing people. I'm always a lead by example person. And we did that at Painting with a Twist, but it's different. You can't lead in the civilian world, a person the way you would lean on an E2 to get a job done. when 5 o'clock hits, they're leaving whether it's done or not, and you're picking up the mess. That was a definite challenge for me coming from the Army, where, we weren't leaving until the mission was complete. The real world, the mission's complete when the 8-hour shift is over. So it really, and that still translates today with Sheets Laundry Club. People will stay, but you're paying overtime.
So at Sheets, though, can I walk into my grocery store and buy these?
You can't. Well, it depends on where you live. We are in all the Harris Teeter locations, which is 262 big box stores in 7 states here on the East Coast. We'll be in all the Meijer locations this August. And looking like we'll probably be up in Wegmans as well later this year.
So let's talk about the products, because it started with this idea that, look at all this laundry detergent. We all got big bottles, on the shelf somewhere that we use and then throw out, because what else are you going to do with it?
Sure.
And it started with just laundry detergent sheets, but you've got a variety of different things that kind of fit this vision of let's get the plastic out of things that we use every day, every week, really out of these are household products. So tell us about some of the products and some of the expansion that's going on.
Yeah, so I mean, the laundry sheet was first and foremost, like you said, and the concept behind that really came from a short memory I had. And I was stationed in Korea in 1999 to 2000. In Asia, they had a kind of a laundry detergent sheet. It was a dryer sheet where they put the laundry detergent over it. So you threw it in the wash, and the dryer sheet transitioned over the dryer. It didn't work at all, in my opinion, but kind of gave me the idea, because, we started out as an e-commerce business, and you can't ship liquid and be competitive in the laundry space because of the weight. So I knew if we wanted to get into the laundry space on e-commerce, we had to figure out how to be able to ship effectively and stay competitive with other products in the space. So that's really where the vision for the laundry sheet came from. Obviously, it's 180 degrees different than what I used in 1999. Technology's grown a lot since then, but it gave me the idea to research that and figure out where that laundry sheet had evolved to over the course of 20 years. As of today, we've expanded the product line from, like I said, scent boosters. We've got plant-based dryer sheets, where we no longer, if you didn't know, a dryer sheet, all of that little fabric that it's on is actually woven plastic. So we now use a cellulose plant-based material that we put everything on. So it's completely compostable and biodegradable. We've entered into the kitchen space as well. We've replaced the Dawn dish soap with solid dish soaps, to dishwasher tablets, to soap trays, to coconut scrubs instead of the cleaning pads that have microplastics in it. We've got into the personal care, whether it's body soaps or shampoo bars, deodorants, things like that. So we're slowly just trying to build a brand that can transition some of the cleaning and self-care products that we're using on a daily basis. We're transitioning those out of the home with products that meet the same efficacy, that are price competitive with everything on the market, that make an impact. The goal and part of my vision statement with people is we need to create products that work, that don't require a lifestyle change, and they don't break the bank. So that's always the first and foremost. Going green or going clean, as they call it, is very expensive in many instances, and it's very life-changing for some people to do. And everything we've developed doesn't require you necessarily to read an instruction manual on how to use it or how to do it. So you're getting the same type of product. You're just making an impact without actually having to learn how to do it.
Yeah, and I think most of us would choose a more friendly product. You can get some of the plastics out if it was cost effective. You didn't feel like you were, being charged up 30% because of it. And certainly at a time when we have, unfortunately, raging inflation, these are price point decisions people have to make. Is your business primarily e-commerce at this point, Chris, or is it transitioning from e-commerce over to the brick and mortar provision where you can get it into the big boxes?
Yeah, I mean, we're primarily e-commerce still. We've started out e-commerce. We started out, shipping 5 orders a day to 10 orders a day to several thousand orders a day. So we're still shipping out, at north of 50,000 orders a month right now, through our facilities here. But we are definitely focused on retail. And at the end of the day, it all comes down to the vision of making a change, and turning that tide on plastic pollution. So retail locations give us that ability to do the same thing. So the 2022 focus was expanding the brand into retail, and we're doing that nicely. We think we should be in about 750 major big box retailers by the end of the year, and hope to be closer to 3,000 by the end of 2023, with a continued focus to grow the e-com brand.
Yeah, I think it's just a great option for folks, the e-commerce brand. And I'd probably be remiss if I didn't mention or ask you to talk about your Shark Tank experience for Sheets Laundry Club. Yeah. I mean, we did. It was never in the plans when we started Sheets Laundry Club. And it's kind of ironic because I've watched Shark Tank since its conception, probably, I think, 13 seasons ago. I think I've always been an entrepreneur at heart, just, didn't really make the transition till retirement. But I've always loved it. And I've always wondered how people come up with these quirky ideas to get on a TV show. So last July, actually, we went out and filmed an episode. I think we were the first company of season 13 to actually film, and went on that show. And it was a phenomenal experience. It was something I think I'm honored to say I did once, but I don't think I would like to do twice. I think once was enough of that experience. But you learn a lot. You learn a lot about yourself. You learn a lot about your business. You learn a lot. I mean, it took a lot of intestinal fortitude for me to get up there in front of 5, celebrities that are super wealthy. I think a lot of people don't realize the 30 or 40 cameras and 100 people that are behind the scenes that are also watching you while you do that. It's truly kind of as you see on TV. I didn't have an opportunity to sit down with a shark or meet a shark. The first time I saw their faces was when those double doors open, just like you see on TV. And you're out there for obviously a much longer duration. They edit it down to hopefully some of the better parts that make your brand look successful and make you look successful. But the overall experience was huge for us. It gave us a huge platform to grow the business. We've had Fox News, New York Times, Fortune magazine, just a lot of opportunity to continue to tell our story and grow our brand post Shark Tank. So I'm beyond thankful for the opportunity to get a chance to do that, because it was definitely not something I had ever envisioned doing in my life. Yeah, no, it's one of those things that can really boost a business, whether they invest or they don't. But along the way, you have to sharpen your vision, your concept, and be able to convince folks of it. And obviously, you've got some investors that you've been able to convince, and now you're proving up the model by shipping over 50,000 units a month from Sheets Laundry Club. What we'd really appreciate the extra time that you gave us today, Chris. I think that you're talking about experiences as a Black Hawk pilot and exposure to burn pit problems and resulting respiratory issues was important, and we appreciate and suggest you continue working in that area, because obviously we're not quite there yet, and making sure that all our veterans who have such problems are going to be appropriately treated by VA and compensated by VA. So that's really important work. But it's also fascinating to hear how an Army helicopter pilot transitions to, I'll just call you a business mogul. whether you feel like one or not yet, because every day there's a new challenge in business, isn't there?
There absolutely is. I mean, every day presents a new challenge, and that's one thing I think every veteran out there understands is it's nothing more than a challenge. It's never, it's not a stop sign. You just got to figure out the workaround to push through and continue to move forward. And I really appreciate that opportunity. And for those veterans out there that are suffering from lung damage, I definitely recommend that nonprofit organization, Burn Pits 360, to check them out. Rosie and Leroy Torres have, in my opinion, really forefronted making a lot of progress for the veterans out there. And their website has more resources and knowledge in there to really help veterans understand how to move forward.
Well, I want to say that we've also had the chance to talk to Rosie Torres at Burn Pit 360 and support the work that they're doing. And actually, the U.S. Supreme Court just issued a recent opinion for Leon Torres and his fight relative to his employment or reemployment back with the Texas State Police. Yep. So just that U.S. Supreme Court case just came down in the last week. So kind of, if you're really connecting dots, there's a whole lot of dots to connect there. Chris, thanks for spending some extra time with Veterans Radio today and giving us some insight.
You bet. I appreciate the opportunity, and thank you. And just as veterans say, never give up and continue to fight the good fight. And I appreciate your guys' support, and have a wonderful afternoon.
And I want to thank everybody for listening to Veterans Radio today. I am Jim Fausone. It's been a pleasure to be your host. I'm a veterans disability lawyer at Legal Help for Veterans, and you can reach us at 800-693-4800 or legalhelpforveterans.com on the web. You can follow Veterans Radio on Facebook and listen to its podcasts and internet radio shows by going to veteransradio.net. And until next time, you are dismissed.
If you have a VA claim denied by the Board of Veterans' Appeals, contact Legal Help for Veterans at 1-800-693-4800. They're experts in handling cases before the U.S. Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims. Their number again, 1-800-693-4800.
We again want to thank our national sponsors, the National Veterans Business Development Council, NVBDC.org, VA Ann Arbor Health Care System, the Vietnam Veterans of America Charles S. Kettles Chapter, Ann Arbor, Michigan, VFW Graf O'Hara Post 423 in Ann Arbor, and the American Legion Press Corn Post 46, also in Ann Arbor, and the Veterans Lending Council, which advises lenders, realtors, buyers about VA Home Loan Program, and you can find them on Facebook. We appreciate all your support. You can go to veteransradio.net, click on the sponsor level, and continue to support keeping Veterans Radio on the air. And until next time, you are dismissed.
Okay, round two. Name something that's not boring.
A laundry? Ooh, a book club. Computer solitaire, huh?
Ah, sorry, we were looking for Chumba Casino. That's right, ChumbaCasino.com has over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.